Welcome to reality. You're now on the Code of Mind channel. Many of us are accustomed to thinking that death is the final chord. The process is complete, the file is closed, the record is erased, and the player is no longer in the system. We have been conditioned to linear logic, birth, life, and the inevitable deletion of data. But what if I told you that in March 1955, Albert Einstein sent a letter that shatters our understanding of the end of the road? This was not a scientific essay. It was a personal letter to the family of his closest friend, Michel Besso. Besso was the only person Einstein officially thanked in his major work on the theory of relativity. They had been hacking the laws of physics together for decades. And so, when Michel passed away, Einstein, already an old man and realizing his own path was coming to an end, wrote something startling to his family. Instead of standard condolences, he wrote the phrase, "Michel has preceded me a little in leaving this strange world. This means nothing. For us convinced physicists, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." Einstein knew that physical departure is not the destruction of data, but merely the completion of one rendering process. He understood that his friend had not disappeared. He had simply fixed himself in another sector of reality. Just 5 weeks after this letter, Einstein himself passed away. But his words remained as a key to understanding what is being hidden from us. We are used to seeing the world as a change of frames, but what if the entire film of your life already exists in its entirety? What if death is simply the moment when the system stops rendering the current sector for your consciousness, but the code itself remains untouched? Today we will look into the very root of this simulation and figure out why the deletion of a person is just an interface error in your head. Let's think about these words of Einstein. "Michel has preceded me a little in leaving this strange world. This means nothing." For us convinced physicists, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Notice the greatest mind in history does not turn to religion, mysticism, or beautiful metaphors to comfort his friend's family. He asserts that our separation into a past where a person was alive and a present where they are allegedly gone is just a software error in our perception. Stubborn, massive, but an illusion. Why was he so sure of this? Because in the basic code of the universe, in all the equations of physics, death simply does not exist. In mathematics, it doesn't matter which way a process moves. If you run any formula of the quantum world forward or backward, it will work perfectly. For equations, there is no difference between a person is breathing and a person has stopped breathing. These are just different states of the same data. In the code of reality, there is no delete file command. There is only the change state command. The fact that we don't see someone in our now does not mean they were erased from the system. It means only that your consciousness has moved further along the coordinate scale. But in the code of the universe, the point where your loved one is alive, smiling and talking to you, exists forever. This scene is fixed in the memory of the matrix for good. Death is not a physical disappearance, it is merely the moment when the system stops rendering the object in your current sector. But if data is written into reality, it cannot be destroyed. We live in a world where not a single bit of information vanishes without a trace. And if physics says that time is an illusion, it means the end it brings with it is just as much a decoration. We do not disappear. We simply remain in the frames that have already been rendered. Theoretical physicists say it straight. The objective world simply is. It doesn't happen or occur. In reality, it is only the gaze of your consciousness, like the reading head of a player, running along the lifeline and rendering the picture in your brain. Rendering happens only where the cursor of your attention is located at that very second. Draw an analogy with a computer game. When you move to a new level, the previous locations are not erased from the server's memory. They remain fixed in the code. You simply no longer direct your video card resources there. You no longer render them. But if you move the character back, the location will be there unchanged. Death in this system is not the deletion of your file. It is merely the moment when the cursor of consciousness reaches the final frame of your biological record in this incarnation. But the code of your presence itself does not disappear anywhere. Your coordinates in the block universe are occupied forever. The matrix never erases what has once been written into it. It simply switches rendering resources to other sectors, to other nows. Remember, the fact that you don't see something at the moment doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The person you lost is not erased. They are fixed in the eternal memory of the system. They remain in the coordinates where they are alive, and this data is immutable. You are not temporary guests in this world. You are an eternal part of its software. Who actually benefits from you believing in the final erasure of your personality? Why is the concept of death as an absolute end broadcast from every source? The answer is cynical to the extreme. The system needs a mortal resource. If you believe your file will be deleted, you turn into the perfect battery with a limited service life. The fear of final disappearance is the whip in the hands of the matrix. When you are convinced that death is deletion, you become extremely obedient. You agree to humiliating conditions of existence because there will be no other chance. You waste your life energy on meaningless fuss, trying to catch everything before the program closes. You become vulnerable to any blackmail, because your life is your only and final property. The Matrix has built an entire industry on this perception bug. It sells salvation from something that doesn't exist. It makes you cling to the current rendering of your body like a last straw, pumping attention, money, and will out of you. But as soon as you understand that you are not a temporary guest but an integral part of the code, this whole machine of suppression stalls. But there is one glitch in this program of fear of death that scientists have recorded in reality. There are particles that have a very short system-built lifetimer. By all laws, they should decay in the upper layers of the atmosphere. Mathematically, their path should end up there, at the top. They simply cannot reach the ground. But they do reach it. Billions of these particles are piercing the space around you right now. Why? Because when a particle moves at high speed, the matrix changes the rules of the game. Its death timer simply freezes. To an external observer, it should have already disappeared, but in its own reality, it continues its path. This is direct proof that death is not a final ending, but a configurable parameter. It is a question of the angle and speed at which the system renders your presence. If even a tiny particle can cheat its end simply by changing the conditions of its movement, then imagine how illusory the concept of death is for such a complex code as your consciousness. Death is not file deletion, but the moment when the system stops rendering you in one sector while you continue your movement in another. Your past, your loved ones, every breath you took, have not disappeared anywhere. They are in that part of the universe's hard drive that your attention is not reading right now, but the record is alive and it is eternal. Thank you for being with me on this channel. I wish you the best possible branch of reality. Subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video. Take care.